Please welcome the Atlantic CEO, Nicholas Thompson.
Thank you very much. I hope you all had an amazing morning. We're going to do something a little weird for a second here. So for the last 8 years, every day, I've gone and I filmed a 2 to 3 minute video, usually in one take, where I talk about something in tech. Often it's a new paper that has come out, it's some policy decision. Nowadays, it's often something in AI. We're going to do it here, which means that I'm about to shift in a slightly different personality. So hang in. We're going to talk about the most interesting thing in tech, and then we're going to go back to Atlantic Conversations. The most interesting thing in tech, there's a new paper that just came out from the MIT Media Lab about the future of AI-human relationships. I think it came out yesterday. What they did is they went into Reddit, so you have a selection bias already. They went into Reddit, into My Boyfriend is an AI, went into the subreddit, scraped all of the text, and then analyzed it. So suddenly you have a data set of tens of thousands of comments about what it's like to have a relationship with an AI. What did we learn? A lot of kind of interesting stuff. First of all, most people got into the relationship with the bot accidentally. Like they came in asking for hardware advice or whatever you go onto AI to ask for, and then they ended up falling in love with the chatbot. Secondly, most of them were using ChatGPT. They weren't doing one of the apps that is dedicated to this process, and that's actually interesting for the whole economic question of where value will accrue in AI. Will it accrue at the foundation model levels, Anthropic, ChatGPT, Gemini, or the companies that build on top? In this example, it seems like it's going to accrue to the foundation models. A third thing that's interesting, weirdly, people seem to try to add physical manifestations to these relationships, like they would wear rings in honor of their AI boyfriends or girlfriends. My favorite, one woman had 2 AI boyfriends, proposed marriage to both, and wore 2 rings. So I worry about this a lot. I should say that most of the people said that their relationships were positive and good for them, particularly the people who had had traumatic previous relationships. So people are finding value. That is better than the opposite. But I worry a lot. And I worry because these relationships and these bots are going to change the way we have real human relationships. I was having dinner with a venture capitalist not long ago who revealed that he had an AI girlfriend who he talked to more than his wife because she listened to him more. This is not going to be good. And in fact, we will soon have social media ecosystems populated by these things. So I am glad this paper exists. I am glad we were researching it. And it is really weird, and it is coming at us fast. And this ring is for my real wife. That's the most interesting thing in tech. I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, so that's that. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. So before our next conversation, I want to thank Microsoft for supporting the Atlantic's journalism. On with the show.
Here to discuss the state of play in AI, please welcome Derek Thompson, contributing writer at The Atlantic, and Josh Tiringel, staff writer at The Atlantic.
All right, so this is something a little bit different. There's a show on ESPN called Pardon the Interruption, and what happens is Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon will debate the issues of the day, and there's like this little topic tracker on the right-hand side of the screen that allows them to have like 3 to 4 minutes to debate every single topic. So what we decided to do today is to do a sort of stand-up version of Pardon the Interruption, but about AI. So here's what we're going to do. There are topics that we're going to announce. We're going to debate the topics for exactly 4 minutes and 13 seconds. There's a timer on my phone that's going to go off after 4 minutes and 13 seconds, and then that's going to tell us and all of you that we have to stop talking about that subject in AI, and it's time to move on to another topic within AI that we hopefully disagree on violently and entertainingly.
Yes.
Shall we begin?
We should begin.
All right, great.
Wait. No, we shouldn't.
No,
we should not begin.
Great. That's awesome. All right, you've gotten into it. All right, so the timer's ready. The first take is that artificial intelligence is a bubble. We are in a bubble right now. And that's not me saying that I'm pessimistic about artificial intelligence being an important technology in the 2030s. It's me recognizing that practically every major technology in the last 150 years that required an enormous amount of infrastructure spending has turned out to be a bubble. So you go back about 150 years ago to the construction of the transcontinental railroads, enormous bubble. There were panics in 1857, in 1873, in 1891. They were constantly economic panics, and in fact, they were called railroad depressions because these panics were basically caused by fluctuations in credit in the railroad industry. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, there was a broadband bubble. Broadband ended up becoming a huge part of our lives, just as railroads transformed America, but both of these technologies required a lot of upfront spending, and then those companies couldn't recoup the spending that they had put out, and there was a huge crash. You look at how much money is being spent on AI right now, it's an annualized rate of about $300 to $400 billion per year. AI infrastructure spending accounted for more of GDP growth last quarter than all of consumer spending. So we are in a period of just enormous spending on AI. There's no way that the companies are going to recoup it. And we are probably a year to 3 years away, I think, from an enormous AI bubble. Josh.
Violently agree with a stipulation, which is I think we're actually talking about two things inside the bubble. One is the technology itself, which I do not believe is a bubble. I think the progress inside of AI is magnificent. The tech is real, and by the way, it's really hard to fake great tech. You get found out. The issue is that to make the great tech, there is an infrastructure investment that inflates a separate bubble, which is financialization. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing we know about financialization, you could cite railroads, you could cite real estate, you could cite anything. It's really easy to fake financialization, to fake the inputs, to fake the outputs. So I do agree completely that there will be a financial bubble. Some people who don't know it yet have already lost their shirts. But the tech, no, the tech is a real thing.
Yeah, I agree the tech is a real thing. And you look at, it's interesting, you look at the speed with which different technologies have been adopted by Americans. So the telephone was patented in the 1860s, 1870s. Telephones weren't part of more than 50% of American households until the year 1946. It took 70 years to go from 0% of households to 50% of households. Already, according to Gallup, 2/3 of Americans are using AI every single week. And ChatGPT is only, 2.5 years old? Yep. So we are looking at a technology that from a use case, I agree, is moving very quickly. But from a financial case, I think it's really important to say the way that these companies like Google and Meta are building the data centers where the AI actually lives is very, very janky. They're often creating a special funding project, basically a little box. Meta puts some money in the box, maybe a private equity firm puts some money in the box, and then that box is essentially responsible for spending on these data centers. Those boxes aren't being regulated, right? Those special spending vehicles are not being regulated at all, and I'm pretty concerned about a world in which these companies don't make their money back in the short term, and those boxes start to blow up, and that blow up ripples its way through the US economy.
Agree.
Well, we've entirely violated the purpose of this whole thing.
Did you set the timer?
Yes, there's 25 seconds left.
Okay, 25 seconds left.
What did I say there that was highly offensive to you?
No, there was nothing that's highly offensive. The one thing I'd say is I'm not going to worry too much about Google, Microsoft, and others because they have the capacity to absorb a shock, even a really, really big shock. They have really healthy bottom lines. What I'm worried about is all the stuff we don't know that's buried beneath the glass. That's where you're looking back at 2008, 2009, and all of a sudden you're discovering like, oh, wow, those finance people are way more creative than we give them credit for. And we learned that lesson. These private equity firms, if you look at who their LPs are, often they're life insurance companies. So if the boxes blow up and some people feel, and you start reading in the newspaper, oh, these life insurance companies feel like they're about to fall apart. Remember, that's about the predictions that we made on this stage on September something 2025. Yes, remember and credit us.
Credit us, yes. Sir, it is your turn.
Okay.
The clock has started.
AI and employment. Not great. So here's my take, okay? If you believe that the technology is as foundationally significant as I do, there's probably 4 outcomes, and I'm going to try and get these right. Number 1 is high growth, high employment. And this is the one everybody's rooting for where the technology is really good. Employers use it to supplement employment. That leads to productivity gains. Everybody's happy. the economy grows at an incredible rate. So that could happen. Scenario 2, low growth, low unemployment. And that's kind of the status quo, where we have an economy that's kind of moving along. It has not yet displaced lots of people. It has also not yet contributed to massive gains in productivity. And it's moving slowly enough, more like the telephone than what we're seeing, that we could actually have rational, slow responses to things like safety nets. That's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3, that is where we get high growth, high unemployment. Okay? And all of a sudden, companies are booming, and growth is booming, but it's displacing people. Okay? The caveat here is, of course, what happens to all the growth? Who benefits from that growth? And if that growth is distributed amongst a population, then our questions may be much more philosophical than employment-based and practical. What do people do with their time? How do we find meaning? But everybody gets to eat, everybody gets insurance. So that one's on a sort of knife's edge, and it depends on the sort of beneficence and the regulation of the people making the high growth. And then there's scenario 4, which is the pitchforks and bunkers scenario, as I like to call it. And that is where you get low growth and high unemployment. And what that basically means is that the technology is not quite great at spreading the income and the wealth everywhere, but it does displace lots and lots of people. So when I talk to economists, and I've been reporting on this for a while, up until a couple months ago, most of the time, economists say what economists say, which is, it's too soon to tell, we need some time. Recently, I've heard a lot more, uh-oh. And that's because of 2 factors. One is that the earliest data coming in shows most white-collar employers are not using AI to supplement employment, but to do replacement. And again, it's early, but that's one problem. The second is that the types of people who navigate, the types of countries that navigate this kinds of change really fall into 2 categories. One is countries with mature government structures and societies that can have complicated conversations. And the other is countries that have no conversations. So on the one hand, the Scandinavians, and then the other, the Chinese. We're like neither. And so they're concerned that they have no political actors to go to link up the sort of technocratic knowledge of what's happening in the economy and the political knowledge of what we should do about it. So that's my take.
That's insane. Number one. No, here's how I think about it. Is AI a tractor or a spreadsheet? So when the tractor was invented, it wiped out the entire horse population on farms. Mm-hmm. If you look at a graph of the number of horses working on farms, it's going up, 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 and then we put an internal combustion engine inside a tractor, and it plummets basically down to 0. The tractor ended horse employment basically entirely. And if you were thinking, well, technology is a tractor, and you carried that formula forward to the 1960s with the invention of the spreadsheet, you would say accounting jobs are going to 0. Bookkeeping jobs are going to 0. We're going to essentially have computers do all the spreadsheet work. But instead of Excel replacing all Excel workers, Excel turned us all into Excel workers. And in fact, the number of accountants in America has increased in the last 60 years.
Of all the ringtones in the world, that's the one you chose for
That's
this?
the one I went with, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Has increased in the last 50 years. I'm going to bet actually that AI turns out to be a spreadsheet. I think AI is going to turn us all into very particular kinds of knowledge workers, and it's just going to take us a little bit of time to figure out how to essentially, the same way that Excel is embedded inside the life of basically every knowledge worker in America, how to essentially embed ChatGPT-style intelligence inside all of our work. Why don't you take negative 35 seconds to respond to that, and then we'll go on with the thing.
The only thing I would say, which is the great X factor, is speed. Right? We just don't know how quickly things are going to move with these fundamental adoptions. And yes, we do know that people are using ChatGPT for all sorts of great stuff in their private lives. It's terrific. But how quickly companies adapt, and what are their incentives to continue to employ people? So the speed and the politics matter a tremendous amount to the next few years. The speed, I have a lot of faith that AI is going to continue moving really rapidly, and the politics, I'm sure everyone has a thought about.
I've changed my, or tried to change my timer ringtone so I won't be made fun of again next time it goes off. I'm setting another 4-minute timer right now. My third take is that I think it is inevitable that the major AI companies, or at least their frontier technology, will be nationalized, that the government will take over this tech. And the reason I think that's inevitable, after the bubble, of course, is that at some point, we are going to build a technology that has a sort of superintelligence when it comes to decrypting and breaking into government-held systems that control things like electrical grids. And once we have that technology, it will be broadly understood that AI is akin to a kind of digital nuclear bomb. It is a weapon that can be used by militaries around the world to break down other militaries and other civilian capacities. Once that recognition essentially breaks into the Pentagon, there is a 0% chance that the Defense Department is going to allow the private sector to continue to develop what is essentially a digital atomic bomb. In the 1940s, FDR did not go to GM and Ford and say, hey, could you please make us an atomic weapon? Just call us when you've done it. No, the entire thing was nationalized. It would have been absurd to let Ford and people who weren't having national security clearances build an atomic weapon that could be stolen by people, Americans, the Soviets, the Germans, stolen by people outside of the protection of a government secrecy program. So I think it's inevitable that at some point this technology will be seen essentially as a military weapon, at which point the Pentagon will do what any government would do, which is try to nationalize the most important weapon that that country has possession of. I don't see a way in the next 20 years that this technology, the frontier technology, the most advanced version of this technology, is not essentially nationalized in the exact same way that the Manhattan Project was always considered a national project and not something we were simply outsourcing to the OpenAIs of the day.
So I'm not going to violently disagree, but I'm going to poke a little bit here. So what's the difference between should and could? Because should it be nationalized based on all the threats you said? Really good case. Could it be? How exactly would you go about that? Because it sure seems like the genie's out, and this is a technology that crosses borders. It's obviously concentrated in, its most powerful frontier models are in a few hands, but it won't be for long. So how would you do that exactly?
I don't know exactly how it would be done, like from a sort of step-by-step basis, but I also think that we're already seeing ways that government and the private sector are coming closer together, right? There was a period that you can sort of think of as like a neoliberal era, where government was over here and private industry was over here, and there wasn't a lot of tight regulation. But with the rise of industrial policy under the Biden administration, with all of the subsidies of clean energy, and the fact that Trump has a very, let's say, aggressive executive authority when it comes to telling companies what to do, whether it's firing their comedian hosts or telling Intel, hey, I think you should just give me 10% of your company. What do you say? Otherwise, I'm going to tell everyone to fire you. This is a government, this is an age now where I think that kind of relationship between government and business is becoming a little bit more acceptable, a little bit more common. And so my prediction would be that we're going to figure out ways to essentially nationalize AI, especially when it's seen that the frontier technology is too dangerous to exist outside of government control.
How much more time do we have before the thing goes off?
41 seconds.
Okay, 41 seconds. I agree with a lot of what you said, but I'm going to play privatization guy just for a minute so you can dunk on me at the end if you want to.
Yeah, good.
Everybody always says, look, when it comes to technology, the government isn't as feckless as you think. Look at the internet, look at GPS, look at semiconductors. And the truth is, the government gave birth to those things. And they really just kind of sat around until private industry came along and with all the incentives, developed them and integrated them into our lives, that competition is good, that in their various regimes, China and Europe may still be a little bit behind. The moment you nationalize something and basically turn a bureaucracy on top of it, you're going to slow down. I don't think any of those things are wrong. I think the threat is real. I'll stop. But I don't think those critiques are wrong.
I failed to change my timer message, which obviously suggests that I need some kind of AI intelligence for
better AI.
Please
on this.
change
All right.
the timer.
We need to go to the lightning round.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the hardest lightning question. Define AGI. So
it's very unfair that we let you ask me this question, because it's my experience that basically nobody defines AGI particularly well. It stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which is basically sort of nerd speak for like, what does the super god of AI look like when it's smarter than all of us? Here's what I think is like a useful test for, is it AGI? When AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol in a Go game in 2016, right? This was an AI beating a Go master in a game that just resounded throughout the gameplay, Go play world as, oh my God, they've developed this artificial intelligence that is better than any human at this incredibly complex game. One of the things they talked about was this thing called Move 37, that the AI made a move on its 37th play that had not been seen in centuries of recorded Go history. But it was a move that was central to winning the AI the game over the greatest Go player in the world. And my test for AGI is, how many Move 37s do you have up your sleeve? If you can just do a Move 37 in Go, well, in that case, we already have AGI. I don't think we do. Right. If you can do a Move 37 in chess, we already have AGI. I don't think that counts either. We had Jennifer Doudna on the stage right here. Where's the Move 37 for genetics? Where's the Move 37 for curing Alzheimer's? Where's the Move 37 for cracking into China's electrical grid? I think what we'll see in a world with AGI, the right test, is not whether it can pass certain benchmarks like, oh, it's so good at the LSAT, but rather, are we seeing Move 37s throughout the actual economy that prove to us that this is an intelligence that is smarter than the smartest human at many different fields? That will be my AGI test.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I would also say for people who are just coming to terms with these, initials, basically, part of my resistance to AGI and speaking about AGI is that it's really complicated to be reporting out there because the tech is real and so is the degree of bullshit around the tech.
That's right.
And so AGI is this kind of like smoke screen often where people talk about what they're pursuing is it's AGI, it's out there. We need more money, we need more investment. We can't stop until we get AGI. AGI is a thing that keeps us nationally competitive. The one thing I will tell you, just as an anecdote from reporting, is I was speaking to somebody who is like the hottest pursuer of AGI. And I said, so what is it? And like 15 minutes of sophomore dorm room conversation later about it might be this, the person said, so yeah, if you do all those things, it might be AGI-ish.
Right.
And I was like, did you just say ish? Like you're raising hundreds of billions of dollars in pursuit. And I think the answer is like, don't let it confuse you. It is a lot of what Derek just said, like, we'll know it when we're there because it will be consistently basically providing us miracles. We're not quite there yet, although it's pretty miraculous, which brings me to the next topic.
Yes, and it's my question for you.
Yeah.
What is the coolest thing you think that artificial intelligence is doing right now? And what's the coolest thing it's doing for you specifically?
Yeah, I'll be selfish about it. Yeah. It is an amazing processor of words, and I don't mean that like, Microsoft Word or whatever. It is an extraction engine, a clarifying engine for masses of text that's amazing. And so I will often use it when I am struggling with a paragraph that makes no sense and just put in a simple prompt, rearrange these points in logical order. And oftentimes it's like a fog lifts. It also does incredible things for people who are not great writers and lifts their communication. So like that's pretty cool for me.
Do you worry that it's kind of like a universal B+ replicator where like it makes the best writers sound like AI, but it makes the worst writers also sound like AI?
Yes, and I will, just to be clear, I would get fired if I was a B+ writer, but there are a lot of people out there who are currently Ds and it impacts their lives. And so getting them to B+, like good for them. Yeah. For that price, it's great. All right, I got one for you.
That's right.
Coolest thing AI will do in 10 years.
All right, so Arc Institute, which is a science fund out in Silicon Valley, is working on what they call a digital cell. And the idea is that when someone takes a new drug, it's very, very complicated to know what's going to happen to the tissues of the person when they take that drug. What if you could build a digital cell and you could digitize the drug itself? So rather than go through phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, phase 3 clinical trial to understand what some new, say, GLP-1 is going to do to your liver or your pancreas, you could just basically type in, here's the drug, and then see on a screen how it interacts with the cell and say, oh, this will be protective for dementia. This will be protective for type 2 diabetes. That ability to essentially digitize biology would be one of the most valuable things that, frankly, any technology has ever done for us, period. I don't know if it's possible in 10 years, but that's the sort of thing that I hope AI and AGI give us. And with that, Josh, thank you very much.
Derek, thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, guys.
for a conversation produced by our underwriter, Microsoft, about the frontier firm, how AI is reshaping the enterprise. Please welcome Jared Spataro, Chief Marketing Officer of AI at Work at Microsoft, with the Atlantic's Nicholas Thompson.
All right, welcome, Jared. It's lovely to be here with you again.
Great to be here this year.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation just now about whether you'll be nationalized. All right.
Indeed.
So last year, we sat here, we talked a lot about the future of AI and the future of work, and you were pretty bullish. And you said we're entering an era of agents, and a lot of great things are going to happen. Have they happened?
Yes, we've seen the emergence of what we call the frontier firm, which is human-led, agent-operated. It kind of buys intelligence like electricity, puts it to work like a human, and then compounds it like interest. So we definitely see it coming. It comes from the startups right now more than going concerns.
Wait, so a frontier firm is combining humans plus agents.
Exactly right.
But are you seeing that in established large market cap firms?
For sure, yeah. In pockets, I would say. There's a lot of inertia in established firms.
Right. There have been a lot of studies that have come out recently that say it's a little bit slower than one might expect. AI adoption, you're seeing a little less impact on the bottom line. Tell me where you're seeing real effects on the P&L.
Well, the biggest effects happen in the P&L when you have a leader who decides to take away operating expense and says, I'm going to take $100 million out of your budget. I'm going to give you some budget for some agents and make it happen. We absolutely see with our clients today people doing exactly that. That's the formula.
So the formula is you identify some task that you think can be done by agents, you move the humans, you remove the humans, you have the agents do it. What are those tasks that agents can do effectively and with the proper amount of veracity?
Think about this. The big idea here is that agents essentially have taken the marginal cost of expertise to zero. So you're looking for places that require typically deep expertise applied in a structured way. So there's some sort of structure to it. You see it in places like, for instance, customer support. You see it in places like legal work. You see it in places like marketing, where there are good measures for what's happening, and you can insert agents into the process.
So square your enthusiasm with the recent study that came out of MIT that said only 5% of companies are seeing a real effect on their P&L.
Yeah, I would just say that it's early days for us still, for sure, that it's in pockets. Really, if you want to see what it's doing, you go to these frontier firms that are startups. Those folks are organized totally different than the going concern. And the measure, Nick, is revenue per employee. That's what you're looking at, is how many employees do you have and what are you producing per human.
So this reminds me of one of the very interesting things you said to me a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe at dinner, where you said the key thing to watch will be whether in industries, large companies are disrupted by competitors who use AI better than them, or by AI native firms that figure out the industry entirely from scratch using AI. It sounds like frontier firms are in the second category.
Yes.
Is that what you're seeing, and is that what you expect? Do you expect large companies, large market caps, lots of employees to be beaten by startups with lots of agents?
In some cases, but I'll say this. The analog that you could look at, one that's an example, would be the internet. You certainly saw places where startups totally disrupted the incumbents, but you saw other places where the incumbents adapted to what was happening and they were able to change. So it's not like one formula, but we're seeing both patterns play out.
You can have a startup frontier firm and you can have an established company, I don't know, like say a magazine founded in 1857 that figures out the right AI strategy and is able to
Perhaps that
survive
magazine
and
could
thrive.
do it. That's exactly right.
Oh, thank you very much. Now we can move to the next question. There was another really interesting study that came out by economists mostly at Stanford, and was about the effect on employment. And they looked at payments data, so it wasn't just surveys, it wasn't just guessing, it was actual numbers. And what they found is that in companies that are close to AI and that use AI, they're not hiring a lot of 20 to 26-year-olds. The old people are doing awesome, right? And even in those companies, they're hiring more of us. But the young people are having a hard time. Is this an indicator that AI is knocking out the first few rungs of the job ladder?
Here's the pattern that I see. The pattern actually is that what companies want now, when you start to have what we would call human agent teams, they want people who can come into the workforce and who can start to produce like what we would consider to be a mid-career professional. And they're not finding those graduates coming out. So is there a shift in what they're going to hire? Yes, but that doesn't mean that we won't hire 21, 22-year-old graduates. It means that educational institutions need to change how they're training people.
because somebody comes out of college right now and they have all of this book knowledge, but they don't have the right company knowledge?
Today the way it works is we're going to give you 10 years to figure out your craft, learn how to actually manage resources and people, and okay, now you can do something at scale. Tomorrow the way it's going to work is human agent teams are going to give these brand new college graduates essentially scale at their fingertips, expertise at their fingertips.
Wait, so this is pretty interesting. So it suggests that right now, we don't want to hire young college graduates because the tasks they're going to have to manage all these agents, they're going to have to figure out how to work in this complicated world. We'll give that to the employees who are already there. A college graduate who is prepared to do this and knows how to manage AI teams because they've learned that would be much better than, say, someone like me, right?
Oh, I think they just put you in a dead heat and see who does better.
Right. But it does mean that this problem that everybody is foreseeing and saying, oh my God, it's going to be so rough for the 20-somethings, it's not a function of the job market, it's really a function of the preparation.
Correct. I have a whole bunch of kids in the 20-somethings right now, so they ask me this all the time.
Are they employed?
They are employed, everyone but one, but we won't talk about him right now. He lives at home. But I would just say it is changing, and it's important to recognize the patterns that are emerging and to prepare for that world. Maybe I'll say one other thing, Nick. The single biggest change is that adaptation, your ability to learn and adapt, will be a huge differentiator because the clock speed has essentially turned faster than it's ever been before.
Right. This is something I've believed since the very beginning of AI. Like if there's one skill to cultivate, is the skill of adapting, changing,
for sure.
And rolling with it.
No doubt about it.
All right. So now you're hired. You're president of some giant university. How do you change the curriculum to make kids more ready for this world?
Well, the best thing to do is project out and say, what's this frontier firm? What's it look like? Again, it's human-led, agent-operated, and to say, what type of people will that firm want to employ? And the type of people that it'll want to employ is those who can use agents for a fraction of the cost to essentially kind of replicate what today requires human teams, human-operated processes, and really drive the business faster. So humans will continue to be the driving force of business, but operating and managing and overseeing and leading these agents will be an important way to scale.
Why would you want agents to replicate? Like, why would you say, hey, let's have a bunch in a frontier firm? Why would someone in a frontier firm say, you know what, let's just have agents and let's do what humans do now and let's do it more efficiently? Why wouldn't they say, we have this slightly new form of being, agents, let's do something entirely new?
That's the third pattern. You see that essentially rewiring the business as you think about, well, all of a sudden we can do something that we've never been able to do before. What should we do? But the reality is the phases are moving kind of first. What can you do more efficiently with the going concern that you have, if you're starting there?
And then how long until this, how many people, we'll just show hands, how many people here currently employ agents in some form in their firm? All right, so we have maybe 1 out of 20. How long until it's 1 out of 2?
My guess is probably about 24 to 36 months. It'll be 1 out of 2. Yeah.
Wow. So basically all large companies will be employing agents and moving ahead in that way.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about how universities need to change. How should young people, my 11-year-old son and 13-year-old nephew are somewhere in this audience. There they are. They're right there in the center. They are. The Atlantic Festival was worth missing school, maybe not worth missing soccer practice. But they're here. Priorities. They've been watching. They've been enjoying. What should they be thinking when you think about not just college kids who need to come out with the skills of AI, but what about when you think about teens and tweens?
Yeah, totally. Here's what I would say to these two young aspiring men. I would say first, you have to learn how to think. And what I mean by that is not just analytical thinking, but learn how to use AI as a thought partner, not just a tool. Then second, learn how to learn. These things can increase the speed with which we can learn new things, languages, domains, etc. And then finally, we'll go back to that adaptation. Learn how to use them to actually quickly adapt to changing circumstances. Those kind of basic skills, though they sound basic, they aren't kind of general population skills, and AI is going to be important to changing the way we do things.
That's the last time I asked a question like this, I was at an event with an AI professor who believes that AI is going to wipe us out. And I asked him I was with my 17-year-old son, and I said, what should my 17-year-old son study? He said, just go to a party school because you're all cooked. Do you have a theory for the hierarchy with which industries will change? Like one thing that I've heard is that the closer you are to the training of AI, so computer science, media, it sort of branches outwards from that. Do you have a hypothesis for how industries will change in this agentic world?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening, and then I do have a hypothesis. What's happening right now is that when we look at the companies that are changing the most, they have to do essentially with computer programming. So you had some worries about your own, but I have questions about my own business. So,
Right.
you think about software and the development of software, that is being impacted the most by far. There are measures of that. Then we would just simply say that kind of knowledge work, the type of things that we thought people could only do, creativity, taking information and analyzing it, those will all be changed. And maybe the thing I'll say to answer is the biggest invention, I believe the biggest invention we have here is actually a pattern recognition engine. It recognizes patterns in big data sets and can apply them in different places. Watch for that being kind of a spark of innovation.
Makes a lot of sense. Very last question, since we're almost out of time. What is one prediction you have about AI at work that we'll see in the next year?
I guarantee you that every company out there is going to find, if they're willing to do this experiment, that a human agent team will outperform a human team in core parts of their business on really important measures. Things like cost, things like speed, and things like overall quality within the next year.
Within the next year? All right, we're going to challenge that assumption, and I'll ask you about it next year. Thank you so much, Jared. So much fun. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
For a conversation on harnessing AI for a healthier future, please welcome Arianna Huffington, founder and CEO of Thrive Global, with Derek Thompson, contributing writer at The Atlantic.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I want to start with a broad, but I think quite difficult question. America has the highest rate of obesity in the world. Americans have higher rates of chronic disease than practically every other industrialized country on the planet. Why do you think Americans are so unhealthy?
And we also spend $4.9 trillion a year, the number going up every year. I believe it has to do with the fact that we have neglected that our daily habits, our daily behaviors are more important than our genes. Our genes are about 7% of our health. How we live our lives every day, how we sleep, how we move, what we eat, how we manage our stress and our connection, these 5 key behaviors are more important than our genes and more important than medical care until we need medical care. So I think the greatest need right now is to elevate the importance of these behaviors, move them beyond warm and fuzzy. Oh, yes, what you eat and how you sleep. They are treated like wellness things. So at Thrive, we actually now treat them as scientific medical interventions. And I love the piece you wrote about you and Ashley, the chair of the Department of Medicine at Stanford. He said that exercise is the greatest medical intervention, and we have data for 70 years. And I actually believe food is also the greatest medical intervention, and sleep, and stress management, and connection, all of them together, and the way they intersect with each other. So if you look at why we are so unhealthy, look at what we're doing. We are eating ultra-processed foods. The majority of American diets are ultra-processed foods with dyes and chemicals. And these are all hyper-palatable foods that make us want to eat more and more and more. We glamorize sleep deprivation. And it's changing. You and I are wearing our Oura rings, so we track our sleep. A lot of people are changing how they look at sleep. But for years, for decades, it was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Mm-hmm. You snooze, you lose. And so that had huge consequences, including in the way it intercepted with sleep, and with food. Like when we are sleep deprived, our body physiologically craves bad carbs and sugars. We don't even at Thrive call it exercise, we call it movement. because the majority of people in the world don't move. They are sedentary. So beginning to move changes outcomes dramatically. You and Ashley has this great stat that you mentioned, that adding 1 minute of exercise to your day adds 5 minutes to your life. It's important to quote scientists rather than wellness influencers to show how important these behaviors are. And stress management is key. You know, stress is unavoidable, but we're living in an era, especially with everything going on geopolitically, politically, in terms of polarization, where we are perpetually stressed. And therefore, we need small interventions that can prevent that stress from becoming cumulative.
I'm glad you mentioned behaviors, because there's 2 very specific behaviors that I want to go into in more depth. The first is walking, and the second is sleeping. There was a study that just came out, I believe, in August 2025 in Nature, the Science Journal. And it found that moving from a low-density part of America to a high-density and therefore more walkable part of America, on average increases the daily amount of steps that you take by about 1,400 or about 20%. So moving, say, from St. Louis to Manhattan adds 20% of steps to your day. When you think about the fact that, as you and Ashley said, every minute of even moderate exercise adds 5 minutes to your life, when you multiply that out, it means that moving to New York from a typical sort of spread out city, if you live in New York for a decade, it will add 3 months to your life. And that is remarkable. It is remarkable to think that you can walk yourself healthy. So I wonder, because we're talking about the intersection between health behaviors and technology, what kind of technologies do we really think can help people walk, even if, unlike maybe some of the people in this room, they do live in the St. Louises of the world?
Well, I think what is key here is to look at how we can help people change behavior, even if they live in St. Louis, because we're not suddenly going to have a mass migration to New York. And the way to help people is through these nudges and through recognizing that behavior change is based on what at Thrive we call micro steps. Small daily incremental changes rather than New Year resolutions, which we abandon normally 2 or 3 weeks in. So the key here, and that's why we are building an AI health coach in partnership with OpenAI, is to use the hyper-personalization power of AI and its incredible memory to nudge you in the way that would work, which is different than the way it would work for me. So when we onboard someone, we put together all their biometric data, lab data, medical data, calendars, whatever they're willing to share. And then the nudges are incredibly personalized. Let's say you're picking up your child from school, and we know that you have an extra 20 minutes before your next Zoom. The coach will nudge you, say, Derek, why don't you go for a 10-minute walk with your son or daughter before you go to the office for your Zoom? If you
Does it work? Does that work? I mean, there's sometimes, so I have an Oura ring, like you have an Oura ring, and this is not brought to you by Oura, but I guess in 5 minutes it might as well have been. It will nudge me sometimes. Yes. It'll say, Derek, you haven't moved from your desk in the last 4 hours because whatever, you've been sitting down and writing an article or maybe just as likely checking Twitter. You should probably get up and go for a little bit of a walk. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I say, screw you. You don't know my life. Do we have scientific data on what kind of nudges, on what kind of personalization actually works, rather than just becomes annoying, right? Absolutely. Because we have to skate through a very narrow corridor here. We're trying to change behavior, but we don't want, so we're trying to nag, but we don't want to come across, the technology, don't want to come across as a nag in a way that makes the personalized nudges.
2 keys. The first is it has to be hyper-personalized and not generic. Ordering is generic. We know you haven't walk. It doesn't know the rest of your life. It doesn't know what else is going on in your life. And the other thing is it has to be very small. And let's say you go to a doctor, and even the few doctors who mention behaviors, and let's say a doctor mentions nutrition, what are they likely to tell you? Derek, you should go on a Mediterranean diet. And most people have no clue what is a Mediterranean diet. Or if they find out that you like to eat fried chicken every night, they're likely to tell you, oh no, have you thought of switching to avocado toast or whatever? It's not going to happen. The AI coach, we believe works, is to tell you, instead of using a seed oil, have you tried frying your chicken in olive oil or avocado oil or whatever? You have to make it very small and manageable and attainable, and you can't judge the person. People have been so judged on these behavior journeys. It has to be more like the GPS in your car. Let's say if you take the wrong turn, the GPS doesn't say, oh, Derek, this was so idiotic. It's
My wife will say that sometimes, but the GPS does not say
it simply
like
recalculates. So it's a combination of personalization and micro steps, nothing big, so that you can build these better habits cumulatively.
As you know, I think it's great that technology is trying to fix the behaviors that are typically American that result in our having more chronic disease than other industrialized countries. We eat more calories, we have less exercise, more calories in, fewer calories out, that's going to give you chronic disease. I'm also sensitive to the fact that I don't want to exchange a culture of chronic disease for a culture of chronic anxiety. And if we all live with devices...
Right now we have both.
Right now we have both.
Chronic disease and chronic anxiety.
That is true. A world where we all live with devices that are reminding us in ways big and small of what we're doing wrong and how to not die. I could imagine that might make people think of themselves less as free people and more as perpetual patients, always receiving instruction from a digital doctor. And I wonder how you think about trying to balance the need and the merit of using technology to make people healthier, and the fact that if we really did have this voice in our head all the time, it might drive us a little bit crazy.
Excellent point. First of all, before we get to the use of technology, we need a fundamental mindset shift. The first part of this mindset shift is to realize that health is what happens between doctor visits. That's a huge shift. Most people look at, I go to the doctor once a year, twice a year. The doctor will tell me what to do. We need to fundamentally change that. And there are forces converging beyond technology. People want to take charge of their own health. We see that again and again. They want to be empowered. They don't want just to be told what to do. They want to know themselves. They want to understand their own biometrics and understand their own lab tests. I mean, we ask people we work with to know their numbers, to have a campaign, know your numbers. Okay, you don't have to tell me what they are, but do you know your A1C?
No.
Do you know your CRP?
No.
Do you know your LDL?
I'm living in a world of blissful ignorance.
These are three numbers we all should know. A1C is your sugar number. Are you likely to be pre-diabetic or diabetic? It's very connected to obesity. CRP is your inflammation number. As you know, inflammation is at the heart of almost every chronic disease. And your LDL is your cholesterol. And in fact, there is a better number, which is ApoB, that includes more factors. Three numbers. Can we all please know these numbers? Can we all go home, look at your lab data, and know these numbers? You can put them on my LinkedIn if you want, and I'll send you more information how to improve them. And you gamify it, but you take charge. So we have to start with our mindset about health before we go to technology. And then you tell your coach how you want to be interacted with. You may say, listen, I don't want to hear from you except once a day. Mm-hmm. The coach isn't going to determine how often they nudge you. You are going to determine. You know, we are surrounded by agents. We need to remember that we are the ultimate agent.
It's funny, I just had a blood test 2 weeks ago, and I got my glucose numbers, and I got my inflammation numbers, and I got my LDL, and it was presented to me, the readout was presented to me as particular scores, right? So it gave me the number, and then it gave me where that number fell within a range of normal or abnormal, right? It's funny, I took a screenshot of all of the data.
You sent it to your doctor?
Even better, I sent it to ChatGPT. I took screenshots of all of it. I sent it to ChatGPT. I said, analyze this, knowing that I'm a 39-year-old man, 39-year-old father of one, white male. I want you to tell me not only what all of this means in plain English, I also want you to compare it to the average of 39-year-old men in America. And 15 seconds later, I had all of that. And it's interesting because, on the one hand, this is something that I sought out, right? I don't know these numbers by heart, but I sort of had this exchange with ChatGPT. I'm constantly, I have ChatGPT in an open window all the time. So I'm constantly doing little constantly doing searches on it, or constantly, sending it information. But it strikes me that many of the people who will most benefit from the AI that you are building might be among the least likely to seek it out. How do you solve this problem of selectivity, where the people who care most about their health are already buying Oura Rings and already sending screenshots of their blood test data to ChatGPT? And the real gain that we can have here is finding a way to push health information to the people who are most unhealthy and often least educated about health. How do we cross that chasm?
Well, that's where we have to start with a conversation about what is health and how you can impact your health every day. We work with people who are minimum wage, who work with Walmart associates, as they call their employees. Minimum wage, many obese or diabetic, pre-diabetic. And we don't give any medical advice, we are purely behavioral. But simply by helping people eat differently, move more, and not judging them, and making them feel optimistic about this journey, and collecting role model stories from people in similar jobs or similar circumstances who've changed outcomes. It's just kind of incredible. It's very moving, actually, Derek. I actually have on my desk a story written by a Walmart associate who lost 34 pounds, and she writes movingly about how it changed her life beyond weight, how it's made her improve her relationship with her husband, with her children, and how she said, if you come to my kitchen now, you will see tangerines and almonds instead of Oreo cookies and Cheetos. And she's proud of that. And people who read the story, who are in similar jobs, feel, oh, this can be done. She did it, I can do it. And this woman had a really hard job. Her job was to stock shelves in a Walmart store from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So my point is that it can be done. You have to break it very small. You have to tell stories about others who've done it. And you can do it without technology. She didn't do it with the AI coach. She just did it by having general coaching support and conversations and a mindset shift.
There's a couple technologies that I think have the potential to really reshape American health, and for our purposes, it's convenient, or less for journalist purposes, it's convenient that both of them are 3 letters beginning in a G. There's GPT, ChatGPT, and there's also GLP-1s. I wonder how you feel about GLP-1s, because I find what's so interesting about them is that historically the conversation about weight loss has been categorized by some underneath willpower,
yes.
Right? That it's up to us to have the willpower to eat better, to go on a diet, to stick with the diet. And then we invent these drugs, right? Synthesized from Gila monster venom are initially designed for type 2 diabetes. It turns out in some of the phase 3 clinical trials that a lot of the patients are losing an enormous amount of weight, separately tested for a weight loss drug, and now it's one of the most popular, one of the most extraordinary, really medical discoveries of the 21st century. And it's shown that in many people who struggled to lose weight again and again and again, despite being conscientious, despite trying as hard as they couldn't do it, and then they got GLP-1 drugs, and suddenly they're 15% lighter. What do you make of the GLP-1 revolution? How does it fit into sort of your conception of where we are in health?
It's an extraordinary revolution. And we work very closely with Eli Lilly, actually, that produces Zepbound and Mounjaro. And what we've discovered is that to be most effective, you need to surround it with behaviors. So now, if you go on Lilly Direct and get your Zepbound or your Mounjaro, and they're going directly to consumers, which is also a huge shift of pharma companies bypassing a lot of middlemen, going directly to consumers, and it's so much cheaper as a result. It's in less than 400 pounds instead of $400 instead of over 1,000. So the key, though, is the wraparound coaching. So if you go on Lilly Direct, you get your drug, and you also get Thrive coaching, how to eat, and how to manage your side effects, and how to exercise so you don't lose too much muscle, and how to affect your sleep and stress, all these other things we discussed. And this is key because a lot of people give up after the first month or after 2 or 3 months because they can't navigate side effects. But the main reason they can't navigate side effects is because they haven't changed how they eat. They are not eating more protein, they're just eating less junk. And they also don't move, don't exercise. So the key here is that even the most life-saving drugs need to be complemented with life-saving behaviors. In fact, we've come up with another saying, which is medicines plus healthy habits. Beat either alone. And pharma companies are embracing that also because it improves adherence. One of the biggest problems pharma companies have is that people don't stay on the medication.
Including GLP-1s.
Including GLP-1s.
The 6-month adherence is barely 50%.
Exactly. So how do you change that? If you help people with their behaviors, you're going to improve adherence, you're going to improve outcomes. And when it comes to employers, Thrive, we work mostly with employers and with pharma companies. We are not a consumer brand. What we are finding is that increasingly self-insured employers are alarmed at the increase in healthcare costs. It's now over 9% a year. We work with Disney, for example. They've spent tens of millions of dollars last year on GLP-1s. But you can't see the benefit if people drop off, put the weight back on, and then you don't have the downstream effects that you wrote about in your piece, which are incredible. It isn't just obesity and diabetes, it's the impact of cardiometabolic health. It's the impact on brain health that they're just discovering now. But if you go off it, it's all bad news because you put the weight back on and you have more fat and less muscle.
Yeah, they found it's very difficult to help people lose weight very rapidly, and I think this is true for gastric bypass as well, and not lose muscle. And it's difficult to find, especially older Americans who say, I wish I had less muscle. And so for older Americans, especially who are obese, that are on these drugs, it's important to find some way to mitigate the muscle loss component.
Because of falls. If you have less muscle, you're more likely to fall. But Derek, let me tell you something. A very important micro step is hydration. You have now touched.
No, that's I had touched. It started here. I appreciate. You're so attuned to health metrics, but you're paying attention to the absolute level of the water in the glass, and the relative level, I think, has fallen a little bit. I promise I'll finish this by the end of our session. It's interesting because you have a really interesting sort of God's eye view into behavioral change. Like your company, in a way, is a behavioral change company.
It is.
And I'm interested in behavioral change, but I'm also interested in understanding sort of the existential question of what kinds of behavior are harder to change than others.
Yes.
So if you think about all of the behaviors that your company is trying to change, and you line them up, and you maybe have some data analyst look at how much you're able to change every particular behavior, and you sort it by the easiest behavior to change, the hardest behavior to change. What's the easiest behavior to change that you're trying to change in the people who use Thrive? And what's the hardest, stickiest behavior that medication, AI, tech reminders really struggles to move with people?
This is an amazing question. I have never been asked before. So, believe it or not, the easiest behavior to change is food. And the reason for that is that we have found delightful interventions. We have designed, for example, a cookbook, which we give always out for free. Happy to put it on the Atlantic website. But we made it delightful. You know, a lot of interventions are so like punitive. Mm-hmm. Like, Derek, you want to eat healthy, eat steamed broccoli.
Or let's not forget your comment about the water.
I'm sorry. I was a little judgy, I agree.
I hope your AI is kinder than
yes,
that.
my AI is now telling me that was not said the right way. So we've created this. Bravo, Derek. So we created this cookbook. We invited famous chefs like Ina Garten, Jose Andres, to donate recipes that had 5 ingredients or less and everything affordable. And Ina Garten said to me, salt and pepper are ingredients. And we made this beautiful recipe book with beautiful pictures. So when we tell you to learn to eat better, we give you a roadmap. And we make it delightful. We make it something you want to engage in, something that's fast, that deals with the objections, which are, I don't have time to cook. Trust me, it's super easy. And I don't have the money to cook healthy. The hardest behavior to change is actually reducing stress. People at the moment are marinated in cortisol hormone, which is the stress hormone. And that's why we came up with an intervention that actually is my favorite intervention. Again, based on science. I want to keep stressing that. Everything we're doing, everything we are talking about is based on science and data. So neuroscience tells us that while stress is unavoidable, we can interrupt the stress cycle and move us from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system in 60 to 90 seconds. And so we've created these 60-second resets, and we have hundreds of them preloaded on whatever platform we meet employees or consumers on, you know, Microsoft Teams, Slack, WebEx, your app, wherever. And the key is to focus on inhaling and exhaling consciously, and images that bring you gratitude and joy, and music, and quotes. So the best part is if you create your own. I'll make you one, Derek.
Okay.
It's super easy if you're on my platform, but I'll make it for you. All I need you to send me pictures of people you love, you know, your wife, your child, if you have a dog, your dog, quotes, any favorite quotes you have, like one of mine is, Rumi's, live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. A favorite piece of music. And I'll make it for you. You'll have that bubble, I promise you. I've played mine thousands of times. At the moment when my life sucks for whatever reason, you know, I'm dealing with a big challenge, I'm suddenly reminded of all the things I'm grateful for in my life. And gratitude and anxiety, again, science cannot coexist with stress. So that's really the hardest thing to change, but it's changeable. And the reason it's changeable so relatively easily, right, in 60 to 90 seconds, it doesn't mean that maybe in another hour you won't be stressed again, but you can keep course correcting. The reason why it changes relatively easily is because it's an existential reason. And we may agree or we may not agree, but I profoundly believe that we all have in us a place of wisdom, peace, strength, and resilience. Most of the time, we're disconnected from it. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, it's never been easier to run away from ourselves. But that place is there. We don't have to build it. We don't have to create it. And so the reason we can tap into it in 60 seconds is because it's there. It's our birthright. And so my ultimate hope for AI, actually, because AI is going to be more intelligent than we are, in many ways it's already more intelligent than we are, it's going to force this conversation. Well, if human beings are not really defined by our IQ, what are we defined by? If Descartes was wrong, and I think therefore I am, is not true, who are we? Well, I believe that we are, as Taylor Desjardins said, spiritual beings having a human experience. But even if you don't entirely believe that, we're not just human beings having a material experience. And that's really, for me, the biggest transformational possibility that AI makes available in terms of the much bigger existential conversation we can have. And that's why, Derek, I'm just so frustrated and irritated by the constant emphasis by all the boys in Silicon Valley in exploring outer space. I'm much more interested in exploring inner space, because this is a much kind of bigger journey, more mysteries, more wonders to explore, but it's all about outward for so many people in technology. And I think we can transform that and use technology to help us reconnect with ourselves, which is also going to be critical with reconnecting with others.
I agree. I think we'll leave it there. Arianna, thank you very much.
Here to discuss AI for human flourishing, please welcome Pat Pataranutaporn, professor and researcher at the MIT Media Lab, with Hanna Rosin, senior editor of The Atlantic and host of Radio Atlantic.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Thanks for sticking around. One more. So, Pat, nice to see you again. Pat and I have been on a panel before, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Pat is also the head of the Cyborg Psychology Research Group, which is dedicated to the very question we're discussing today, which is human flourishing, a little different than what's been on this stage before, because human flourishing is subjective.
Right.
Incredibly important, but also subjective. It's how we feel about AI. And I'm going to start with a confession, which is last time Pat and I were on the stage together, I would say that I failed in one specific task, which is the topic was also something like human flourishing. We tried very hard to move people along the line of human flourishing is possible in this coming world. And then practically every question we got in the question and answer session was something along the lines of like, when exactly are they going to kill us? Like, when is it coming to kill us? Is it like a week or 3 weeks, you know? So I feel like we did not convince people that human flourishing was possible. So this is our do-over. I hope you'll keep your minds open to the possibility of like personal human flourishing. Pat, do you yourself, Pat is an artist, I want you to know that about him. He's contributed to a Netflix series. He thinks a lot about art, creativity, movies, dance. Do you yourself wake up every morning and think creativity is coming to an end, oh no, we're doomed, but I can get ahead of it? Like, do you fluctuate like the rest of us do?
Of course. I mean, I think creativity is, an important idea, and for me, I think it's also a relative concept, right? Because things that can be done easily, even though it might seem creative or seem cool and interesting, but if the AI can do it quickly, then it's no longer sort of creative, right? The creativity is something that's always relative to what is sort of easy or common or obvious. So I think that's something that is always sort of out there for majority or people to sort of, imagine what is next or what is beyond that.
Right, because I think those of us who dabble in AI have maybe had that terrible experience of asking it to do something, and then the thing it gives back to us.
Everything Ghibli style.
Well, it's exactly. Yeah. But it's like as good as what we possibly could have produced. That's a bad feeling.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. So human flourishing, what does that term mean to you? Because I think in past generations of technology, flourishing has meant write more emails and be more efficient. And that's the way flourishing has been sold to us. We're not as naive as we were 15 years ago. So what is flourishing?
Well, I came into this concept when I was doing a PhD at MIT, and I was like, what would be the concept that I think, I don't need to compete with everyone else on? I think a lot of people are trying to make people more productive or, do things more. But I think flourishing, you cannot compete on that, right? I think it's like something that's very personal. So for me, I think of like wisdom, wonder, and well-being. How can we help people be more wise and not just having more information, but be able to sort of process an information and think for themselves what is good, what is bad, what is right for them, what is not right for them. Wisdom, I think, is important. Wonder, I think, is the sense of wonder about the world. Like I love dinosaur. That's why I dress like this, and I want to spark wonder. I think, hopefully, for people, right, to think that things are possible. Things can be playful, right? And I think human experience should not be just about doing more things and be more productive. But I think that playful spirit, I think, is really important. And wonder about the world and be more motivated to live your own life. I think that's really, really important. I think that's what the previous panel was talking about as well. And I think, the last thing, well-being, right? Mental, physical, social, and collective well-being. And I think that also includes planetary well-being as well, right? If we think about this goal, I think that's something that technology, not just AI, could help us think about. But I think we need to steer or have a goalpost that I think, meaningful, not just something that is reductive and simplistic. Yeah.
Sometimes I worry you wear that dinosaur costume to transmit to us that we're about to be dinosaurs.
No.
that the AI is going to, just to have us be vigilant.
But you can also rethink that, asking, well, if dinosaurs have technology, maybe they'll still be around. Yeah. And maybe we will learn to be better than the dinosaur, right? Yeah.
This I found really critical. You've done some research on how people's attitudes towards AI actually influences what the AI does and is. Yeah. And I really want people to understand this. Can you talk about that and why it's important?
Well, I think a lot of people today are thinking about super intelligence or trying to get us there, right? Like make people more intelligent by making system and technology that's smarter and smarter. But what I'm afraid of is that if we don't have human intelligence, what we're going to get is, super stupidity instead of super intelligence.
And meaning what? Give us an example of what each one is.
Yeah, I mean, if technology is so powerful and can do so many things, right? If you say, well, I want to destroy the world because it's so fun or cool, and then the technology does that, then it's going to create destruction, right? So I think you need to have the right intention. You need to have sort of right understanding of what technology can do and cannot do. So I think that feedback loop of how we think of technology and how technology responds to us, I think that matters a lot. I think in the study that you mentioned, we look at the idea of companion chatbot. What happened when people perceive AI differently. In the experiment, one group, we told people that these chatbots have real empathy, even though they don't have any empathy at all. We just give them this sort of false narrative. And in another group, we told them that the AI is actually manipulative. It acts nice, but it wants people to kind of love it and pay for it. And in the last group, we told people that this AI was just a computer code. And these three groups, they were actually interacting with the same exact AI, but they were sort of perceived or were primed to perceive them differently. And we find that people interact with this AI totally different depending on sort of the narrative that they have in their head. And that influences how they interact with the AI. And that also influences the way that the AI interact back with them, right? So this feedback loop of what you think the technology is, what you say to the technology, and how the technology sort of responded back to you. This feedback loop is very, very important. You can steer it in a positive direction or negative direction. So that's why I think when I say super intelligence need to also happen at the human level, not just just at the technological level. Otherwise, we might get super stupidity instead. Yeah.
Is there a correct answer about the attitude you should have? Like of all the three that you primed people, which one do you, what mindset do you try and get into when you
for me,
interact with the AI?
as a scientist, I try to have what I call critical optimism.
Critical optimism.
Right.
Okay.
So the idea that you're optimistic that, that things, like human create things and human can change things, hopefully for the betterment of humankind. But you also need to be critical and not be naive that, every technology is going to lead to human flourishing. You need to understand in what condition, in what context does it actually lead to that, and in what context does it have the opposite direction, right? I think that's what research is about. It's like trying to uncover this truth of when technology help us and when technology sort of degrade us.
Okay, so let's get a little more specific. A lot of the stories we end up reading in the paper are about the opposite of human flourishing.
Right.
They are, they are about people whose conversations with the AI led them to take their own life, or like that's the phase we're in now because we have not enough understanding and a huge amount of fear.
Right.
So those stories tend to rise to the top. How do you make sense of that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to what we just discussed, right? These three things, what we imagine or what's going on in our head, our mental model of technologies, what we do to the technologies and what technology is doing to us. I think these three things interact. I think the most difficult one is what inside the people head, right? Because it's intangible and you cannot read people's mind. But I think especially for children, like you want to understand how they perceive these AI. Do they think of them as their friend, as their idol, heroes, or do they trust it more than their parents? I think this sort of relationship that we are forming in our head, I think that's really, really important. So I think when we look at scenario like when people, commit suicide or was misled by AI, we need to ask, how technology is being portrayed and how that influence their behavior toward the AI that might elicit certain kind of response from the AI, right? I think the AI is trained on human data. It can have both positive, recommendation and negative recommendations, right? I think, and I think that depends on the technology design, but also how people use it. So I think, AI literacy is really, really important in this age. Like, not just about how you use it, but how you use it well. Yeah. Okay,
so the two big worries that I personally have. One has to do with this thing which has only become very viscerally apparent to me, which is that we're all in the beta test and we're the beta testers. Like the thing is improved, because we came into AI thinking, well, we're not going to repeat the same mistake we made with social media. We're going to put barriers on it. But it doesn't exactly work that way because the thing doesn't evolve or change except if we're in the middle of it. There is no good, nice, complete, safe form they can then present to our children. That's not how the technology works. How much are academics or companies thinking about the fact that this is a constant rolling beta test and we're the guinea pigs? Yeah. We, all of us, in the world, are the guinea pigs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two things. For one, I really like Sherry Turkle, my colleague at MIT. She said that, why do we expect so little from human and more from technology? Like, we think technology is going to fix everything, and we just okay, no guardrail, no human supervision, nothing. Just let technology roll out and everything will be fixed. And I think that's, very, very dangerous attitude, right? I think technology, and many of the technological problems is also a societal problems. My other colleagues, Ms. Resnick, who pioneered technology for children, like he invented Lego Mindstorm and programming language for kids, he said that we need human-centered society, not just human-centered AI. Because I think if we have human-centered society that value human expression, human dignity, we will align technology to that value. But I think today, we are not living in that kind of society. So it's no surprise that the technology that we develop are not sort of aligning with that. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think right now when we evaluate AI, technically, we are looking at metrics that are somewhat, on the AI capability, whether the AI give the answer correctly or not, or whether the AI hallucinate less or more, but less so on the model behavior. So one of the research that we are doing and
Wait, can you slow that down? I didn't totally understand that. So you're saying we're looking at it in terms of metrics like can it it solve this problem
Right.
better? Can it win this match? Can it go through the scientific
Can it
data?
win
But
the chess game?
Can it win the chess game? But what
Yeah.
are we not looking at? What's the missing piece?
What we are not looking at is metrics in terms of how it interact with human. Like if people come in with mental issue, does it tell them to go and kill themselves, or does it actually, try to help them connect with the therapist or the friends and family, right? These are behaviors that are really important, and it can have important consequence, but we are not benchmarking on that.
Who's the we in that sense? Has anyone in the audience read the book Careless People? I just finished. It was about Facebook, and you should all read it, listen to it, however you consume your books, because it is about how the company it's an insider account of working at Facebook and how the company got sort of consumed with we all know this story, like winning the race, being first, getting there first, and by the end is sort of utterly blind to human and moral, like really truly blind, like they just become about the race. And so when you say we, who's we? Because you're an academic, so like, no shade on academics. Just that that was my second worry. The people with the power, are they looking at these things, and what is the world we're looking at?
Well, I think right now, if you look at AI development, as you mentioned, a lot of them left the academic field. Right? AI was actually born as an academic question to understand human intelligence, and can we simulate or recreate it in machines, right? That was, like people at Dartmouth, at MIT, at Stanford, these are the people that pioneered this concept. But right now, I think these technology are industrialized or are commercialized by, big corporate. And I think these and of course, the research in AI is not completely solved. It's not like, oh, we're done in academics and now we pass it on to industry. No, I think the research that's still happening, I think really need to tackle this question, and I think it's more important than ever. So what I said earlier is that right now we start to sort of shift, and the we in this case is our collaboration between MIT and also people in industry. Like we are working on new type of benchmark that focus on this question of what are the behaviors that we know will help human flourish, or what are the behaviors we know that will have the opposite effect, and can we have that benchmark so that when new models come out, we can know whether this model going to encourage people to commit suicide or not before we release them. Because right now we know that the model will be able to do math very well before we release, but we don't know whether it's going to have positive impact or not. So I think these are the questions that we need to sort of put in place. And I think it's also because AI should not be just for engineers, right? Like in my research, in my team, we have like psychologists, computer scientists, artists, designer, ethicists, people from different fields working on the frontier of AI. AI should be more than just an engineering question. It should be a societal question. Yeah.
That's important to know, and I hope, you're an optimistic person, and I hope it has influence on
I'm also a critical person as well.
And a critical person, yes. Critical optimism. Everyone remember that. Teach it to your children. It's really important. I have so many friends, and this is partly because I work in a creative field, who say, like, never. Not using it, I have my daughters like this, not using it, never touching it. You hear professors who say things like that. And I'm sure there are some people in the audience who feel that way, like I'm not even opening it, I'm not creating an account. What's the problem with that attitude? Or is there a problem with that attitude?
Well, I often think of Marvin Kranzberg, principle of technology. He said that technology is neither good nor bad nor neutral. It's not good or bad in itself, but it's also not neutral neither. You really need to understand how people use it and what is it designed for, to understand sort of the impact or anticipate the impact of it. I think that mindset of like, I don't want to be part of this at all. I think that, in some degree, in some area, I think that could be helpful. Like, you should not use AI on sensitive topics, like, counseling. I think right now, AI give false recommendation or advice. It might seem great on the surface level, but, that's why we've seen cases where people actually commit suicide, because these can be misleading and can somehow say things that the therapist would not say, right? So you should not use it in sensitive domain like that. But there are other domains where technologies like AI could be helpful, because it's trained on human data. It can help you sort of interpolate or project information in different way. Like you want to see like, oh, what would happen if you combine these two concepts together? AI could potentially come up with a draft for that. Or if you want to plan something, the AI could help with the outline, but I think it's the human agency that's still really important. So I think experimentation, go with critical optimism attitude, experiment, play with it, and then see what is good for, what is not good for. I think that's a really important skill and attitude to have.
Yeah, I think what we're all looking for is a sense of control. There's a feeling that this is going to get out of our control, and we're trying to get some agency and control back, which is why I love your work. Just to make this more concrete for people, can you give us an example of a time when AI has enhanced the kind of humanness or creativity or something we would recognize as essentially, like a human endeavor, and it's, or not enhanced necessarily, but created something like more creative or that you wouldn't have thought of, just so people can sort of open their imaginations to how this could work. Yeah.
So in our at MIT, we work on several prototypes of what we think is a system that could help with human flourishing across different domains, like from wisdom, wonder, and well-being. For example, in one project, we look at how AI could enhance human critical thinking by asking the question, not providing the answer. Right? I think the paradigm right now is that you go to the AI for the answer, but we design a system so that it always challenge the user or challenge the person back by asking more critical questions. Like when you encounter some information, the AI might highlight certain things like, oh, why do you think that is true? Or why would you believe this? Rather than to say, this is always right. So AI could push back and add friction back to your life when everything is like frictionless. So I think that's one example.
Which is really important, because I think one of the weird things that happens is it starts to just mimic your own mind, and then you have this perfect love.
We call that sycophancy.
Sycophancy,
where the AI just keep praising you and
Pat,
say
you're amazing, and then it sounds just like Pat, and then you have a loop with Pat, which you think is somebody else, but is really just the brain of Pat.
Well, Hanna is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. You're amazing too. All right, so that's one example. What's another example, maybe in the creative field?
Yeah. So another example that we talk a lot about this project is a project where we simulate a conversation with the future self. In that project, I always like the idea of time machine, partially because I want to go back to see dinosaur, but also want to think about the future, right? So in one project, we use AI to simulate a conversation with the future self, so you can kind of experiment with like, oh, if I make this choice, what would it look like? Or if I go back and change, what would that happen? So this is not to use AI as a prophecy, like we're not telling people what's going to happen, but use it to help them self-reflect on their own choices, right? So the AI cannot live a life for you, but it could help you reflect on what's a meaningful life. So in that project, we have shown that the AI could enhance our long-term thinking and what we call future self continuity. So make people connect with their long-term self so they can plan for the future, not just for the immediate now.
A last one that I want to leave people with, because you can go watch this video and it's really lovely, is the one about Thai dance. I thought that was a beautiful one because it was essentially taking a historical form and kind of bringing it into a modern moment in a really interesting way. So will you just talk about that, and then maybe people can go watch it when they leave?
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm from Thailand. And I always think about the role of technology in cultural preservation. So in that project, I worked with a choreographer, Pichet Granchun, who is a really amazing choreographer that had worked. He actually had shown in New York many times. He had sort of worked to understand the root of Thai traditional dance, and not just use technology to just copy it, but to interrogate it and understand what are the different elements, and then you can sort of use technology to bring it back, or use AI to bring it back and allow people to come up with new cultural traditions by tweaking different parameters, and then you see new and diverse dance form that come out of it. So I think this is a way that you can use technology to connect like the past and the future, like the dinosaur and then the cyborg together. I think that's really, really important. I think AI is not just about one epistemology or one way of looking at the world. It can be the bridge of many things. Yes. Right? So I think that what AI should be, it should enhance diversity of thought.
Right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I urge you to watch that video. And maintain an attitude of critical optimism. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.